Hi, you guys. Welcome to Audrey's reading area. Yes, you are here, and I know you're ready to listen to me read these fun and exciting books that I have for you. Can you guess? But first, smash that subscribe button for me. Smash it. All right. Thank you guys so much. Let's see what this book says. This book, Paddington Bear, Special Edition, Wanted on Voyage. So, let's see what this book says. This book is written by Michael Bond and is illustrated by R.W. Alley. Yes. Paddington. This is Paddington Bear. This was out from when I was little. Mr. and Mrs. Brown first met Paddington on a railway platform. In fact, that was how he came to have such an unusual name for a bear, because Paddington was the name of the station. The Browns were waiting to meet their daughter, Judy, when Mr. Brown noticed something small and furry near the left luggage office. "It looks like a bear," he said. "A bear?" repeated Mrs. Brown. "In Paddington Station?" "Don't be silly, Henry. There can't be." But Mr. Brown was right. It was sitting on an old leather suitcase marked "Wanted on Voyage." And as they drew near, it stood up and politely raised its hat. "Good afternoon," it said. "May I help you?" "It's very kind of you," said Mr. Brown. "But as a matter of fact, we were wondering if we could help you." "It's very kind of you," said Mr. Brown. "Wow, you're a very small bear," said Mrs. Bear. "Where are you from?" The bear looked around carefully before replying. "Darkest Peru. I'm not really supposed to be here at all. I'm a stowaway." Wow, he's a stowaway. A stowaway means he hid in someone's luggage to get there. He hid somewhere to get there. "You don't mean to say you've come all the way from South America on your own?" exclaimed Mrs. Brown. "Whatever did you do for food?" Unlocking the suitcase, the bear took out an almost empty glass jar. "I ate marmalade," said Bear. "Bears like marmalade." Mrs. Brown looked at the label around the bear's neck. It said quite simply, "Please look after this bear. Thank you." That's kind of what it says right here, too. "Please look after this bear." "Please look after this bear. Thank you." "Oh, Henry," she cried, "we can't leave him here all by himself. There's no knowing what might happen to him. Can't he come home and stay with us?" "Stay with us?" repeated Mr. Brown nervously. He looked down at the bear. Would you like that?" he asked. "That is," he added hastily, "if you have nothing else planned." "Oh, yes," replied the bear. "I would like that very much. I've nowhere to go and everyone seems in such a hurry." "That settles it," says Mrs. Brown. "Now you must be thirsty after your journey." "Mr. Brown, can you get some tea while I go and meet our daughter Judy?" "But Mary," said Mr. Brown, "we don't even know his name." Mrs. Brown thought for a moment. "I know," she said. "We'll call him Paddington, after the station." "Paddington," the bear tested it several times to make sure. "It sounds very important." Mr. Brown tried it out next. "Follow me, Paddington," he said. "I'll take you to the snack bar." Mr. Brown was as good as his word. Paddington had never seen so many snacks on one tray, and he didn't know which to try first. He was so hungry and thirsty that he climbed up onto the table to get a better look. Mr. Brown turned away, pretending he had tea with a bear at Paddington Station every day of his life. "Henry," cried Mrs. Brown when she arrived with Judy, "what are you doing to that poor bear?" Paddington jumped up to raise his hat, and in his haste, he slipped on a strawberry tart, skidded on the cream, and fell over backwards into his cup of tea. Oh, no. "I think we'd better go before anything else happens," said Mr. Brown. Judy took hold of Paddington's paw. "Come along," she said. "We'll take you home, and you can meet Mrs. Bird and my brother Jonathan." Mr. Brown led the way to a waiting taxi. "Number 32, Windsor Garden, please," he said. The driver stared at Paddington. "Beers is extra," he growled. "Sticky beers is twice as much. And make sure none of it comes off on my interior. It was clean when I set out this morning." The sun was shining as they drove out of the station, and there were cars and big red buses everywhere. Paddington waved to some people waiting at a bus stop, and several of them waved back. It was all very friendly. Paddington tapped the taxi driver on his shoulder. "It isn't a bit like darkest Peru," he announced. The man jumped at the sound of Paddington's voice. "Cream," he said bitterly. "Cream and jam all over my coat." He slid the little window behind him shut. "Oh dear," Henry murmured Mrs. Brown. "I wonder if we're doing the right thing." Fortunately, before anyone had time to answer, they arrived at Windsor Gardens, and Judy helped Paddington onto the pavement. "Now you're going to meet Mrs. Bird," she said. "She looks after us. She's a bit fierce at times, but she doesn't really mean it. I'm sure you'll like her." Paddington felt his knees begin to wobble. "I'm sure I shall, if you say so," he replied. "The thing is, will she like me?" "Goodness gracious," exclaimed Mrs. Bird. "What have you got there?" "It's not a what," said Julie. "It's a bear called Paddington, and he's coming to stay with us." "A bear?" said Mrs. Bird, as Paddington raised his hat. "Well, he has good manners, I'll say that for him." "I'm afraid I stepped on a jam tart by mistake," said Paddington. "I can see that," said Mrs. Bird. "You'd better have a bath before you're very much older. Judy can turn it on for you. I dare say you'll be wanting some marmalade too." "I think she likes you," whispered Judy. Paddington had never been in a bathroom before. While the water was running, he made himself at home. First of all, he tried writing his new name on the steam on the mirror. Then he used Mr. Brown's shaving cream to draw a map of Peru on the floor. It wasn't until a drip landed on his head that he remembered what he was supposed to be doing. He soon discovered that getting into a bath is one thing, but it's quite another matter getting out again, especially when it's full of soapy water. Paddington tried calling out, "Help!" at first in a quiet voice, so as not to disturb anyone, then very loudly, "Help! Help!" When that didn't work, he began bailing the water out with his hat. But the hat had several holes in it, and his map of Peru soon turned into a sea of foam. Suddenly, Jonathan and Judy burst into the bathroom and lifted a dripping Paddington onto the floor. "Thank goodness you're all right," cried Judy. "We heard you calling out." "Fancy making such a mess," said Jonathan admiringly. "You should have pulled the plug out." "Oh," said Paddington, "I never thought of that." When Paddington came downstairs, he looked so clean that no one could possibly be cross with him. His fur was all soft and silky. His nose gleamed, and his paws had lost all traces of the jam and cream. The Browns made room for him in a small armchair, and Mrs. Bird brought him a pot of tea and a plate of hot buttered toast and marmalade. Which, by the way, marmalade is jelly. Yes, jelly. Now, said Mrs. Brown, you must tell us all about yourself. I'm sure you must have had lots of adventures. I have, said Paddington earnestly. Things are always happening to me. I'm that sort of a bear. He settled back in the armchair. Just like me, too. I was brought up by my Aunt Lucy in darkest Peru, he began. But she had to go into a home for retired bears in Lima. He closed his eyes thoughtfully, and a hush fell over the room as everyone waited expectantly. After a while, when nothing happened, they began to get restless. Mr. Brown tried coughing. Then he reached across and poked Paddington. Poked him. Well, I never, he said. I do believe he's fast asleep. After all that's happened to him, said Mrs. Brown, is it any wonder? Paddington, my scrapbook. This is Aunt Lucy. This is Paddington's scrapbook. For my dear Pastuso, memories of times past are very precious, so I hope you will use this book to keep all of yours as fresh in your mind as the day they happened. With love, Aunt Lucy. Now, it says place of birth, darkest Peru. Height 3'6". Age, that's something you don't ask a bear. Distinguishing marks, some old marmalade stains. Permanent address, number 32, Windsor Gardens, London, England, Europe, the world. I hereby certify that this is a genuine copy of my memories. Me today. That's him today. South America. Peru. I don't know how old I was when I was born because soon afterward my parents disappeared. Me, age 6 weeks, 4 days, 1 hour, and 3 minutes. Aw. Me, age 6 weeks, 4 days, 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 2 seconds. Me, age 6 weeks, 4 days, 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 3 seconds. I was told later that there had been something called an earthquake. The camera kept on taking pictures, but everything else had either disappeared or stopped for the moment. Except for me, I landed on a cactus plant and went back up faster than I'd come down. My Aunt Lucy found me. Apart from being warm, duffel coat hoods are useful for keeping things in, like your head when it's raining. And the toggles are easy to do up. Buttons are a bit difficult if you only have paws. And zippers are painful if you're like me and have fur. But I have worn a duffel coat ever since. My Aunt Lucy found me. She wrapped me in an old duffel coat and took me home to live with her. Me, drawn by me, my hood, my coat, toggles. This is Paddington's scrapbook that we're seeing. Aunt Lucy decided to call me Patuso after my uncle. Uncle Patuso must have known that one day there might be an earthquake because he left a note saying that if anything ever happened to him, I could have his suitcase and his best hat. The Peru Journal, my extra suitcase key. This is the only known picture of Uncle Patuso. It was taken on the day he disappeared. Wow. Aunt Lucy is a very wise old bear, and she taught me lots of things, such as mathematics and how to speak English, which, as things turned out, was very useful. A wise bear always keeps a marmalade sandwich under his hat. Aunt Lucy also taught me lots of sayings, which I have always found very useful, like look before you leap, especially on a wet day. It's a wise bear who knows which side of his bread is buttered before it falls to the ground. More haste, less speed, especially with paws. One day, Aunt Lucy showed me how to make marmalade out of jungle oranges. They're like ordinary oranges, only 10 times as big and very juicy. So marmalade is orange jelly. There aren't many left now because Aunt Lucy's marmalade is very popular with all the other beers. Marmalade sandwich. This is the recipe for it. Take 2 slices of bread and spread butter thickly over both. Empty a jar of marmalade over the first one and smooth it over with your paw. Press the second slice of bread on the top. Butter side down. Eat. You will need both paws. Testing. It's testing it. When Aunt Lucy had finished teaching me all she knew, she decided to go into the home for retired bears in Lima, which is the capital of Peru. She said it was high time that I went out into the world. I expect she was right, but I felt sad at the time, and I think she did too. She gave me a picture of herself so that I wouldn't forget her, but of course I never would. I take it with me wherever I go. She also gave me a map of the world and tied this label around my neck. Please look after this bear. Thank you. Oh. Pacific Atlantic Steamship Company's me. So he came on this ship. I packed all my important belongings into Uncle Patuso's suitcase. They rattled a bit because I didn't have very much in those days, and Aunt Lucy gave me lots of jars and marmalade for the journey. Then I stowed away in a lifeboat on a large ocean liner, and we set sail. Look at the map. It was a good thing Aunt Lucy made sure the boat was pointing in the right direction. Otherwise, I might have never ended up in England. I often wonder if she'd had a word with the captain. I wouldn't put it past her. People sometimes ask me how I ended up in a railroad station in London, and I don't really know. I just went wherever everyone else seemed to be going, and nobody stopped me. All I know is that it was a very long journey. I was down to my last jar of marmalade, and that was almost empty. So I was glad when Mr. and Mrs. Brown came along. It was also lucky that the station was called Paddington, for that's how I got my new name. An old photo of Mr. and Mrs. Brown before we met. After that, I went to my first restaurant, had my first cream cake, and I met Mr. and Mrs. Brown's daughter, Judy, who was coming home from school. Then I had my first ride in a London taxi. It took us to the Browns' house at number 32 Windsor Gardens. Here's Judy, and here's the house, 32 Windsor Gardens. This is me at Windsor Gardens with Mrs. Bird and Jonathan, which is Judy's brother. I have my own room. There are lots of drawers to put things in, but apart from the picture of Aunt Lucy, I don't have very much. Aww. Map of important places near number 32 Windsor Gardens. So he's got his map of the place. And it reads, Jonathan and Judy helped me draw a map of London in case I got lost, couldn't find them. It looks more complicated than darkest Peru, but I expect I shall get used to it. This is to the City of London and to Paddington Station. Nice. Nice. Soon after, I went to live in Windsor Gardens. I bought a very old camera in the market. I used it to take a photograph of the whole family, which was how I met the Browns' neighbor, Mr. Curry. Mrs. Bird told me to watch out for him because he's always poking his nose into other people's business. Mr. Curry said he was smiling, so you can see how bad-tempered he normally is. He said he was smiling in this picture. This is the family. This is Paddington is taking pictures. Mr. Brown bought me a basket on wheels for when I go shopping on Portobello Road. Mrs. Bird says I drive a hard bargain, but I have Aunt Lucy to thank for that. She says bears always do. Apart from all the market stalls selling fruit and vegetables, Portobello Road is famous for its antique shops. My favorite shop of all belongs to Mr. Gruber. He has become my best friend, and every morning we have cocoa and buns together. He tells me about Hungary, where he was born, and I tell him about darkest Peru. He is very wise, and I think he and Aunt Lucy would get on well together. He's trying to be a matchmaker now with Aunt Lucy, huh? Today, the postman brought me a letter from Aunt Lucy. With it, there was a photograph of her with her friends at the home for retired bears. Oh. Dear Aunt Lucy, you will be pleased to know I am safe and well. I am living in London with a very nice family called the Browns. I have my own room and lots to eat, and it's all very exciting. P.S. I have had a bath. This is to Aunt Lucy, home for the retired bears, Lima, Peru, South America. Aww. And then it says down here, the other day I came across this postcard. It was my very first one to Aunt Lucy after I arrived in London to let her know where I was and about this nice family, the Browns. I didn't send it because it got messy and I had to write it all out again. Aww. The end. End of story. Aw. Thank you guys so much for listening to me read this fun and exciting book about Paddington Bear. Oh. Oh. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Don't forget, you guys, you can click like and you can share this video on all of your social media pages. You can also smash that subscribe button and tell everybody to come on here and smash it too. That's right. All right, all right, all right. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for your support. And don't forget to watch all my videos. I have over 500 videos here at Audrey's Reading Area. All right, all right, all right. Yes. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you soon.